Hello everyone and welcome to Discussing Dead, and in today's episode we are going to be reviewing and breaking down The Walking Dead Season 9 Episode 10, otherwise entitled Omega. So of course last week we had the mid-season premiere for The Walking Dead Season 9 entitled Adaptation, where we got to see the fallout of the Whisperer's arrival and we got to see how everyone was reacting and dealing with the fact that Jesus was killed by this new threat and this new group, and we saw the capturing of Lydia. Now this episode very much expands on that. We get to see a lot more of Lydia in this episode, and we also get a bit more exploration into the Whisperers, and this is basically acting as the origin story for Alpha, who is our new series villain. However, we do have like a B-C plot going on in this episode, which I'll talk about first just to get it out of the way. We have the new beginning group, which is, Magna and Yumiko and the others, Connie and such, and they go out looking for Luke. This was okay. This is something that we've seen in The Walking Dead before, where we see like a new group who are brought into a new community, in this case, the new beginning group being brought into the hilltop. And we see them basically rebel and go against the rules set by that community, this being Tara, and they basically sneak out when they're not supposed to rebel in some way. We've seen this done before. This wasn't too interesting and it doesn't really go anywhere. They just kind of go out and then they come back and they don't really find anything. So, this whole storyline was just, again, it was just kind of like a natural progression that these characters normally go through when we arrive at a new community. So I feel like this is something they had to get ticked and done, really. It wasn't anything too special. Again, it wasn't particularly exciting like some of the other stuff going on in the episode. So, I mean, this stuff was fine. It just didn't really go anywhere. And of course we had the development of Henry and Lydia in this episode. Henry still being stuck in the cell next to Lydia. He does get out in this episode, but this does lead to a bit more trouble. Henry and Lydia do a lot of talking in this episode and is definitely building, their relationship and their potential romance going forward. It seems like Henry is going to be chasing after Lydia for most of the season like Carl did in the comic story. So I feel like, this was, again, stuff they needed to get done and just to, keep the story flowing. I mean, Henry wasn't as annoying as I thought he was going to be. He does potentially put the kingdom at jeopardy. We do know that the big fair that's going to be taking place in the Big Fair Massacre is most likely going to happen at the kingdom, so we were all kind of speculating, how does Alpha know where the kingdom is? I guess this is how they now know, is that Henry gave Lydia quite a bit of information, because at the end of the day, even Lydia admits in this episode that she was, trying to get information out of them. That's why she was lying, that's why she was manipulating them. She was trying to get information about, their communities and how they were living. So this was really interesting, but what really made me super interested in all this story was Lydia. I think Lydia is a really cool character, somebody who's come in and just really surprised us all. I mean, when she was first introduced, I thought, this is going to be like another child actor on the show. We kind of, that can be quite hit and miss with The Walking Dead. Sometimes you get like a really good one, obviously like Carl and Enid and things like that. But I was kind of surprised because in the last episode, she was such a strong liar and was lying consistently, lying constantly, and she does in this episode too, and Daryl can see straight through her, because there's actually quite an interesting correlation between Lydia and Daryl. Like, they're quite similar people. They grew up in quite similar conditions, so Daryl kind of relates to Lydia and kind of understands where she's coming from. So when Lydia is just lying through her teeth, Daryl can see straight through her, and I think that's really interesting to kind of give them that kind of dynamic, to give her connection to Daryl in that way is really interesting, especially because Daryl is becoming such a prominent character on the show. I mean, he's always been a prominent character, but, he's given the fact that Andrew Lincoln's now gone, Norman Reedus has kind of become the lead of the show, so he getting these moments with, essentially our main hero and the main villain's daughter is quite an interesting setup that I didn't quite expect, but works really well. And we do get the flashbacks in this episode for Alpha. We get quite a lot of exploration into Alpha. This was really interesting because Alpha is just a really terrifying, really scary villain, it looks like. And I really love all this backstory. Like, we see, basically all from one perspective. We see it all from Alpha's perspective about how she was looking after Lydia and her husband and things like that. Her husband was a bit erratic and seemed to be a little bit more jumpy and a bit more impatient, whereas she was incredibly patient, especially when it came to Lydia. But then, all that stuff was great. I loved seeing all that. I thought it was really fun just to delve into the backstory. It was a lot better than what we got with characters like Negan. It was a lot more in line with the Governor. I nearly said the Punisher then. With the Governor, it's a lot more in line with what we got with him back in season 4. It was very much like that. But what was really interesting, this was the best part of the episode for me, is we do actually see that everything, that all these flashbacks was actually Lydia being brainwashed, and she actually has a trigger moment where she almost kills Henry. and it triggers her to get her memory back, and we find out she was actually brainwashed by Alpha to remember things in a certain way, and it turns out that all the abuse that Lydia has suffered throughout the years actually came from her mother, came from Alpha, and not from her father. Her father was actually the good one, really, of the two. And I thought that was really interesting, because then we see the flashbacks, how they really were, and how they really played out. And you see that Alpha she's always had something that just kind of makes her tick. She's always had something sort of behind the eyes. And then as soon as the apocalypse happened, that was kind of it. Then that set her off, and she was able to basically live the way she's always wanted to live. And I thought that was super interesting. Did not expect that at all. Because you see these scars on Lydia's arms, and at first I wasn't quite sure what to make of it. I was like, is that abuse? Is it self-harm? It's not really made abundantly clear. But then, yeah, we actually find out that is Alpha. Alpha did that to her. So, you know, again, the fact that Alpha brainwashed her own daughter to such an extent, I think is really interesting. And I'm very interested to see where they go with Lydia from here. Like, is she going to, you know, turn good and kind of join up with the Hilltop and with Henry, with Alexandria? Or is she going to go back to the Whisperers? Obviously, we do see at the end of the episode, Alpha does come to get her. So, you know, I don't know what's going to happen with Lydia, but I'm super engaged at this point. And then, yeah, like I say, at the end of the episode, Alpha does arrive at the Hilltop, and we see her come to collect Lydia. This is where the episode ends. She says, "I am Alpha." And, yeah, we get to see her properly. Obviously, we've seen her with the mask on and things like that, but we actually get to see her with her mask off in this, and she just looks terrifying. Like, she's completely shaved her head. She's got mud all over her face. Really scary-looking villain, which I'm really happy with. You know, the Whisperers are supposed to be terrifying. They're supposed to be imposing, and I certainly get those vibes from Alpha and the rest of the Whisperers as well. Obviously, we still have Beta to come as well, played by Ryan Hurst. So I think Samantha Morton did a really good job in this episode, not only just portraying Alpha in the flashbacks, but also just doing this one scene where she arrives at the Hilltop in front of her army of Whisperers and just demands that she gets her daughter back. I think it was just a really awesome scene, a great, you know, cold ending to end the episode and to, you know, keep us on the edge of our seat until Sunday. I think it's just a really awesome way to end the episode, just to show Alpha leading this crew. I thought it was really cool, and I'm just so excited to see what they do with this story, with the Whisperers, with Alpha. I think it's really exciting. So to go forward with this, if we can just get more of this, you know, nail it just like they did here, I think we're going to be just fine with Alpha. And there's also just a really cool little tidbit I'd like to mention at the end of this episode. Henry gets a really interesting line of dialogue that he actually says to Daryl, where he's talking about Carol, and he says that the reason why Carol always kept her hair short, because obviously we've always seen Carol with her hair short, and this season, in season 9, after the 6-year time jump, we know she has her hair quite long now. The reason why she always kept it short was because when she was with her husband before he died, every time that he would try to abuse her and she would try to run away, he would pull on her hair to bring her back so she couldn't run away, and that's the reason why she kept her hair short. And I thought that was actually really interesting. That was a really nice little insight into Carol. It's such like a small little detail, but something that, you know, actually explains a lot, especially because we've all been wondering, you know, Carol just let her hair grow out over these 6 years, but what it actually means is that she is clearly very, very happy and very comfortable with Ezekiel, and, you know, she feels, you know, she's at the point where she actually feels safe again, which she hasn't felt for a very, very long time. So just this one little line of dialogue from Henry, like, it's not played up as a big moment, like, Carol's not even in the scene, Carol's not even in this episode, but, you know, it's a really nice moment that adds a little bit more depth to Carol and a little bit more into her backstory, which I really enjoyed. Overall, though, once again, this continues to, you know, thrive with the quality of The Walking Dead this season. It's just continuing to keep me engaged, keep me so interested, keep me on the edge of my seat for every single episode. And, you know, again, I think this is crazy given that I stopped watching this show last season. I just think that, you know, all the stuff going on in The Walking Dead with the Whisperers, with Alpha, and continuing on, you know, Daryl being such a prominent character now, basically being the lead. You know, we have Tara becoming more prominent now. I think all the stuff, all these elements coming together is just making this season really interesting. And this episode, again, just as a proper introduction to Alpha, getting her backstory, you know, seeing her arrive at the Hilltop, this is going to be it now. This is just the beeline to the Pike scene, so I think this is going to be a really great season. I can't wait to see where the back half goes, you know, and how this is all going to develop and how it's going to follow. Lydia, I absolutely love as well. I'm really interested in what they do with her, and now we're just waiting for the introduction of Beta, and we've got all of our major Whisperers on play. So, you know, as another episode of The Walking Dead, I thought this was fantastic. So thank you guys for watching this episode of Discussing Dead. If you want to see more, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss an upload. And if you want to check any more movie reviews and TV related videos, make sure you check out some more videos on the channel. And I hope to see you guys again next time.